Twitter for online presenters and introduce David Carr, our president. Take it away, David.
Okay, I will do so. And I moved this slide to the beginning to remind me to actually click the button, turn on the recording. This meeting will be recorded, and you know the routine there. If something terrible happens during the meeting and you want me to lose the video, I can lose it. Otherwise, welcome to Online Presenters, where we learn skills for better webinars and online events. One of the ways we do that is by doing a series of educational workshops, and you might recognize this couple here as a couple of our members. So we're tapping some of our homegrown talent to teach us about some of the basics of light, camera, and sound that they have learned the hard way by running their Geeks on Tour business around the world. Let's see, we do also have a gentleman named Darren LaCroix, who is a world champion of public speaking, coming around to visit us very shortly. And Cheryl Rausch, who's also a very well-known pro speaker and coach, as well as a number of replays that you can find on our website. Thank you to Ring Central for allowing us to use the Ring Central Meetings online meeting platform for free. It's part of their broader platform, and their platform, by the way, is winning in the cloud. We encourage you to know where to find the mute and unmute buttons, and I just pressed the mute all control a moment ago to make sure we cleared up any background noise, but you can unmute yourself as needed by clicking that button in the lower left-hand corner. And here also is how to switch between the full screen and the gallery mode. We appear to have no guests, so there's no need to go through all this. Say, let's do it. And I am going to hand the master controls over to our Toastmaster of the day, Norman. And so in just a moment, Norman, you should see a little thing pop up saying that you are all powerful. You are the host.
Ah, yes. Omnipotent.
Yes.
That's not the one for the day. Greetings, fellow Toastmasters. This evening, we have an interesting lineup with three speeches I'm looking forward to. And the odd counter is going. We have one position that we don't have filled right now. We need a grammarian. Would anyone volunteer to be a grammarian? Mahi, would you be interested?
I'm leading the table topic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I could probably do grammarian
as part of the grammarian as well as the odd counter.
All right, yeah. Why don't we let Jim do it?
Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
Both listening job.
Okay. Should we go through the roles, or since we are all familiar, move on to the speeches?
I think we can go ahead and move on.
Okay. Well, our first speech this evening will be from Scott Johnston. Scott is a dedicated and passionate Toastmaster whose willingness to go beyond his comfort zone has paid dividends. He loves reading, writing, and the NFL. Okay, let's welcome Scott Johnston.
Thank you. I'll just set up my screen. Spare me with one sec. Here we go. Okay. The Tasmanian devil cannot be mistaken by any other marsupial. It's a spine-chilling screeches, black colour, and reputed bad temper. In the early European settlers to call it the devil. Although only the size of a small dog, it can sound and look incredibly fierce. The world's largest surviving carnivorous marsupial, the devil has a thick set squat build with a relatively large broad head and short, thick tail. The fur is mostly or wholly black, but white markings often occur on the rump and on the chest. Body also varies according to its habitat and diet. The devil can weigh up to 12 kilograms and sometimes sizes up to 30 centimeters from the shoulders. The devils once occurred on mainland Australia, with fossils having been found widely, but it's believed that they became extinct on the mainland. But luckily enough, they managed to escape to the island of Tasmania across the Bass Strait, which is located south of mainland Australia. Today, the devil is one of Tasmanian's icons, but hasn't always held that status. In the early settlement, the European settlers used to condone the devils because they used to attack their poultry farms. And in 1830, the Van Diemen's Land Company decided that they should put a bounty on devils as well as 10 Tasmanian tigers and wild dogs. For more than a century, the devils were trapped and poisoned. They became very rare, seemingly headed for extinction, but the population gradually increased after a law was protected them in 1941. The devils have dropped since 1996, being identified with a devil facial tumour disease, a fatal condition in the Tasmanian devils, characterised by cancer around the mouth and the head. Despite the decline in numbers in the past 10 years, populations of Tasmanian devils remain widespread in Tasmania, from coast to mountains. They live in coastal heath, open dried forests and rainforests. In fact, almost anywhere they can hide and find a shelter by day and find food at night. Devils usually mate in March and the young are born in April. Gestation is only 21 days. Young are weaned at 5 or 6 months of age and are thought to have left the mother and living alone in the bush by late December. They probably start breeding at the end of their second year, and their longevity is up to 7 to 8 years. The devil is mainly a scavenger and feeds on whatever is available. Powerful jaws and teeth enable it to devour its prey, bones, fur, and all completely. Devils are famous for their rowdy communal feeding at carcasses. The noise and displays being used to establish dominance among the pack. The devil is nocturnal. During the day, it usually hides in den or dense bush. It roams considerable distances at night, up to 16 kilometres, along well-defined trails to find food. It usually ambles with a characteristic gait that can gallop quickly using both its hind legs. Younger devils are much more agile and can climb trees. Although not territorial, devils have a home range. The famous gait or yawn of a devil that looks so threatening can be misleading. The devil makes a variety of fierce noises, from harsh coughs and snarls to high-pitched screeches. A sharp squeeze is used as a challenge to other devils and frequently comes before a fight. Many of these spectacular behaviours are bluffs and part of the ritual to minimise harmful fighting when fighting communally at a large carcass. In May 2008, the Tasmanian devil status was formally upgraded to endangered under the Tasmanian Threatened Species Protection Act of 1995. Tasmanian devils are wholly protected due to the facial tumour disease, which is now having a devastating effect on the Tasmanian devil population. In summary, in conclusion, the Tasmanian devil is a colourful icon associated with Tasmania and especially Australia, but it's with its distinctive gait, spine-chilling screeches, powerful jaws, and teeth enabling it to devour its prey. It remains the world's largest carnivorous marsupial, a protected species that hopefully will survive the deadly facial tumour disease and prosper in its habitat. And today, I hope I've really given you a good explanation of one of Australia and Tasmania's famous icons, the devil. And hopefully in time, it will survive the tumours and not go the way of the Tasmanian devil, which unfortunately is now extinct. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's very, very informative. Our next speech will be from Adrienne Williams. She's speaking from the Confident Communications Manual.
Norman,
Yes.
before we go on, can we at least hear the roles and find out who's doing what?
Okay,
Introduce the helpers. That's
okay, the
thank you.
helpers. Okay. The okay, the grammarian is Jem. The timer is John Quick. Okay, the chat monitor, I forget. Who's doing the chat monitor? Okay, the chat monitor is Morale. The watcher is Arlene. The counter is Jem Gould. Okay, and I believe that's it. Okay, fine.
We get the vote counter.
Oh, excuse me. The vote counter is Christian.
Christian. Okay.
Thank you.
Fine. Okay. Our next speaker is Adrienne Williams. The speech title is Your Story. She's speaking from the Competent Communications Manual, Project 3. Adrienne is a real estate broker, investor with over 20 years experience. She enjoys teaching others how to reduce mortgage debt and to make money in real estate. Will you join me in welcoming Toastmaster Adrienne?
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Your story. What is your story? Have you ever thought about that? Eckhart Tolle from A New Earth talks about something called pain bodies. Our pain bodies love to focus on the negative, all the things that's wrong with us. You know those people. You ask them, hello, good day, how are you? And oh my gosh, why did you say that? Oh, well, today is not such a good day. First, my coffee fell on the floor. Then I was on my way to work. I got hit by a car. Then I suffered an injury to my neck. Then I had to go to the hospital. After all of that, it turned out I have a fractured skull. And you are thinking to yourself, why did I ask this person how they were doing today? Because it never ends. It's on and on and on. You can talk to them again in a week. Hi, how are you today? Oh, well, you know, my husband left me. The kids on drugs. No matter what it is, it's something negative. They have nothing good in their life. Hopefully, that's none of us in this club. But your story, you should think of it like this. How you see yourself, that's one way. The second way is how others see you. And the third way is how you want people to see you. I decided to ask my friend about her story. I said, what is your story? And she said to me, my story is I work all the time. And I was thinking to myself, That's not your story. That's what she thinks her story is, but that's not how I see her. Her story is she's so irresponsible that she continues to have to work all the time. And because of her not making the right decisions, she never has any time for herself because she has to keep working to overcome these things that she doesn't seem to correct in her life. She's always in react panic mode. So I said, I'm interested to know what you think my story is. And she says, oh, your story? You overanalyze everything. And I was thinking, wow, that's interesting. Because I thought she would say my story is that I have sickle cell anemia. I tell everybody I have sickle cell anemia. So if something happens, you know what to tell the paramedics that I have an illness so they can treat me properly. So I thought that was an interesting twist on what I thought your story should be about. So here I am today to ask you to consider, what is your story? Sometimes your story is that you're a good father, you're a dad, you're this, you're that. Those are things that you do. It's not who you are, and it's not your story. Your story may be something you accomplished, a milestone, an achievement. It may even be something scattered about your personality. I like to call people, and it is bad, I shouldn't do it, but we automatically judge people, and we have little nicknames for everybody. Oh, she's like the 70s child. She acts like she's in the 70s, a flower child. Someone else may be an overachiever. This one is Miss Know-It-All. We have all these little nicknames for people that we say their story is, which may or may not be their story. It's based on how we have perceived those people. So in this journey of determining what your story is, it's very important because as we speak every day and talk to people and all the different platforms and places we go, people are creating a story about us. How can you get engaged with your audience so they can see you differently for what you want them to know you as? Part of that background is sometimes you have to tell them, I look young. When people meet me in person, they're like, you look like a schoolgirl. I'm not. I'm 51. I have been in real estate for 20 years. I have to let people know that so that I can get the respect and the credentials that I need for all this time. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting. I went to University of Florida. I have a lot of things to offer that people never know about me. So if we don't tell people things about us to help them define our story, then they'll put you in a box. And then you'll be working to get out of this box that you don't belong in the first place. Our story. In Toastmasters, some of us, our story or our goal should be to be a better communicator, effective, clear, concise in our message. It may be that you want to be the best storyteller ever with emotions and excitement and just things that you can say to move someone to action, to inspire them, to have an impact on them, so that when they leave you, they're never, ever the same. Perhaps your story is to be a better leader. Maybe you want to be a head of a Toastmaster club or to start your own. What do people know you by as your story? I challenge you, fellow Toastmasters, to do this exercise. Number one, think of what you think your story is. Ask your friends and family to tell you what they think your story is. You get their opinion first. Don't tell them what you think first. That's the trick. And then reconcile the two and figure out how you can better improve yourself and your story. So as you come and you speak to us and share your life experiences, we all have a lot of them, we will have a better takeaway of who you are, who your target audience is, what you're trying to impact, and what your story is going to be. And some people call it your legacy. We've all worked, we've made money, we've done what we needed to do. Now, before you leave this planet, what is your legacy? Your story. For some, it would have been Martin Luther King. We know his story. Malcolm X, other leaders, Gandhi. There's so many. I could go on and on. And we remember those people for the story that they had that impacted change for all of us. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you. It gave us a lot to think about. Our story, our legacy. Our next speaker will be Graham. He'll be speaking from the Commercially Speaking. The time of his speech will be 7 minutes. It's Project 1, Warm Up Your Audience. The title is Live Radio Will Be the Death of Me. Graham Carnes jokes that he is a face for radio, but then again, he's made that medium his career for 40 years. And on the subject of radio being a medium, Graham points out that a medium is neither rare nor particularly well done, and that sums up radio to a T. But despite the claims that radio is dying, it remains something that is a part of all our lives, or at least Graham's hopes so, since working in radio is what pays for all his Toastmasters membership fees. Come, let's welcome Graham Carnes.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters guests, there is a scene in the movie The Blues Brothers where an excited waitress says, "Music, we've got both kinds of music, country and Western." Now that may seem like a joke, but it's actually true, particularly if you've ever had anything to do with working in regional or country radio. Now, I grew up in the largest city in Australia. I was never more than about 15 kilometres from the central business district. Even when I moved to Brisbane, which is a smaller city, I still stayed within the confines of suburbia. And so you can imagine what it was like when I moved to my first radio station in a town called Longreach, which is in outback Queensland, a town of only 3,000 people, and a town where country music dominated. I got my first job at a radio station in Longreach called 4LG. And while things have changed over the years, I mean, we no longer play records, you know, the big black round things that spin, and commercials aren't anymore placed on cassettes. It's all done digitally, electronically. So some things have changed, but other things have remained the same since I first began in radio and long before. One of those is that the new kid always gets the job that nobody else wants. In my case, it was a program called Ranch Club, 2 hours of country and Western request music. Now, these days, I know the difference between country and Western, but I have to tell you, it wouldn't have mattered in those days because this station played nothing but country and Western. The first song I ever played on air was an Australian version of a Cal Smith hit. The Singing Kettle sang Airmail to Heaven, and it went something like, "Daddy, I hope you'll forgive her. I'm sending this letter with love. I'm sending it airmail to heaven, to your new home up above." Oh, it was terrible. It really, really was tragically bad. And the second song I played was a local country and Western artist called Slim Dusty, who sang "The biggest disappointment in the family was me." And I have to tell you, I knew exactly how he felt at that point. The third song, though, that was new. That was his ribald little ditty that went, "Lonely women make good lovers, wink, wink, nudge, nudge." You know, I mean, the fact that I can still remember those 3 songs 40 years later probably tells you how traumatized I was at the experience. But as I say, I had to do the shift because it's what the new kid did. That didn't change. That hasn't changed. That remains the same in country radio. Something else that remains true of regional or country radio stations are the funeral announcements. Now, in small country towns where the local paper only comes out perhaps once or twice a week, people can die and be buried before their friends and relatives know about it. And so while the funeral announcements are run in the paper, they're also run by the radio station at usually peak time of the morning, somewhere around 8 o'clock, where you've got the most listeners. And it goes something like this. "We now pause to offer our condolences and deepest sympathy before reading the following funeral announcement." And then you start playing this maudlin organ music, you know, like the Claude Rains version of Phantom of the Opera. And ladies and gentlemen, the relatives and friends of the late Fred Nurk are respectfully invited to attend his funeral, which will leave St. Zacchaeus the Tax Collector Church in Eagle Street, Longreach, at 2 p.m. this afternoon. And so after you've read the funeral announcement, you've then got to do something. You can't play an ad because nobody wants their products advertised next to dead people, and so you play a song. And I have heard some spectacularly inappropriate songs played, I have to tell you. I mean, the Bee Gees, wah, 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 staying alive, or up, up and away in a beautiful balloon. But probably the best is I fell into a burning ring of fire. Now, I was lucky. I never actually made that mistake. I came close. I came so close one morning. I was reading a funeral announcement for this particularly crabby old biddy. You know, the sort of person that the only people who are going to turn up at the funeral are those that want to make sure that she actually is gone. So I've just read this funeral announcement for her, and I realize that I am perhaps half a second away from letting the song go and putting it to air. And the song is Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. Let's just say that they got a slightly longer than normal pause that morning while I threw that record off, put another one on, and played something else. So I dodged that bullet. Doesn't mean that I didn't make mistakes. I mean, when you're a young guy working in radio, you don't think about things like, oh, I suppose I should take meals along so that I've got something to eat in the middle of my shift. No, you think, oh, I'll just go down and grab a hamburger at the local hamburger joint after I put on a long record. Well, I found a long record that was perfect. It was Creedence Clearwater Revival from Cosmo's Factory. 11 minutes and 43 seconds. I've heard it through the grapevine. It was brilliant. Except that, well, as I walked back into the studio, after having gone down to get my hamburger and come back, I realized that about 30 seconds after I'd left, it had hit a scratch. And so for 4.5 minutes, all the audience had heard was, heard it through that, 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 heard it through that. Yeah. Embarrassing. But not as embarrassing as this one last story, which I'll tell you, which I think summed up my early career in radio. It's 7:30 in the morning, the peak time for listening. I'm sitting on one side of the desk, getting ready to read the 7:30 news. The radio announcer, the breakfast DJ, is sitting on the other side, and he made a complete and utter mess of a song. It was a dog's breakfast. It was terrible. He threw his headphones off and went, oh, blasphemy, blasphemy. I really bleeped that one up, didn't I? I just pointed over his shoulder at the on-air light. He turned around, looked at it, turned around ashen-faced, looked back at me, went, ah, bleep, and then turned the microphone off. Now, I mention this not to embarrass him, although he was sufficiently embarrassed that he no longer works in the industry. Last I heard, he was installing car radios, but that's not the point. I tell you this because we did not get a single complaint that morning. Not a letter, not an email. Well, there weren't any emails. We're talking 1980. With nothing. Never a comment was made, which means one of two things. Either nobody heard it, which seems unlikely given that we're talking 7:30 on a weekday morning, or people were just so used to this sort of thing happening that it was just another day. And quite frankly, Mr. Toastmaster, I'm not sure which is more depressing.
Thank you very much. There are some comments about the different cultures represented in this club. I never ever thought that country western would be country western in Australia. It just never crossed my mind that we'd have that same dichotomy that we have in the United States in Australia. Thank you very much for that. This is my first time at being Toastmaster of the evening on this club, and I managed to miss a couple of things. I forgot to announce the word for the day and the theme. The word is empathy. Empathy. And it really means the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, empathy. And the theme was going to be Thanksgiving. We're in that season, at least in the United States, we're running up until the time when we're all focusing on giving thanks. But the word empathy and the theme, Thanksgiving. Okay, next we will move into our table topics. And this evening, our table topics master is Mahi. Mahi?
Thank you, Norman. So the table topics for today would be based on the theme for today, which is thankfulness or gratitude. I would like to invite Arlene Hemi for the first table topic. if you have to write a letter of appreciation or a thank you note to someone that has made a deep impact in you, who would that be? And why would you write that note to that person?
Thank you, Mahi, for the question. That is so appropriate for today because I actually wrote that very note this morning and I sent it to Dennis Woldrich because he is the one who a year ago gave my contact information to Bob Blakely, the past international president, because he wanted to join an online club. And even though Dennis belongs to one, he belongs to Witty Storytellers, they meet late at night. And ours would have been a more suitable time for Bob, who happens to be, he was 94 years old at the time. And the experience that I had coaching him on how to be in an online club was just amazing. And I am so grateful to Dennis Woldrich for bringing him into my life and to the life of Firebirds Collective. So funny you should ask that question today. And I miss Bob very much. He's passed away for like 3 weeks now. And we're going to be having a little roasting session for him on December 3rd at Firebirds, and if you'd like to come, you can all come. Dennis will be there, and you can give a little table topic roast if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. That was such a coincidence and very touching. I would like to invite the next one, Murali. Have you ever experienced any random act of kindness from anyone? If so, when was the last time that you experienced? What was that about? Can you please share?
Yesterday, Sunday, I went to, am I audible? Okay. I went to the Sikh temple, Gurdwara in Lansing. So that was the first time. And it was Sunday is a special service on that one. And when I went there, there were many people, and many of them are Sikhs, I mean, obviously, but not all of them. There were other people who are non-Sikhs also. So this is the first time I went in there. I went to the basement to have some kind of breakfast, and someone told me you need to wear cover your head. So I didn't know that in the first place. The person who was next to me, he accompanied me and showed me the place where the spare scarves were there. So he also helped me tie it in the proper way. So I was tying it in a very rough way, but he helped me tie it in a very proper way so that all the hairs are getting covered. So that was the one I really liked about it. And he also accompanied me to the rest of the season during the Sunday service, so that I felt comfortable as a first-time visitor. So that was one of the things I can recollect. Thank you, Topics Master.
Thank you, Murali. That was very interesting. Yeah. So the third one that I have, I'm wondering if Michael would be able to participate in the table topics. Michael?
Yes, I am.
What was one thing or object that you earned really for, but you missed it as a child? Eventually, that deprivation helped you to cultivate an inner strength. So you're so grateful that you actually missed it as you were growing up. Do you think of anything like that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. As a child, my life was modest, to say it nicely, in terms of economics, and I loved to play table tennis. And I yearned for my own table tennis board for many, many years. I had become a good player, but I could only play while at school. I am the last of 6 children, and having 4 sisters ahead of me, everyone watched my every move. And so in the summertime, I would ventured to a nearby high school to play table tennis. And of course, upon my return, there would be a full report from my sister to my parents, who would I would be disciplined for that. So I yearned for my own table tennis board. I never owned one. My father had promised and wasn't able to deliver at the time. That kind of motivated me. I became a very good player. And every chance I got to play, I really gave it my all. I became a really good player. And I joined the school table tennis team and was actually vice captain. And so that motivated me. It let me know that I could, not having something could really drive me to be the best that I can. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Michael. That was definitely an interesting story, and we all look at how sometimes if we do not have resources that helps us to build resilience and make the best use of the opportunity that is given to us. The timer for today, do we have time for one more table topics, or are we out? John, are you the timer?
Yeah, let's
sorry?
proceed.
One more?
No, let's go to the evaluation round.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Norman. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Arlene is a vote counter, and if you would send your votes to her for best speaker, and I see she's shaking her head.
I think Christian is the vote counter.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've got it. Okay, Christian is the vote counter. I got it wrong. Yes. Okay. Would you please send your votes to Christian for best speaker and best table topic speaker. Okay, and now we will turn it over to David Carr, who's our general evaluator. David?
Okay, let me send my vote first.
Oops.
Let's see. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day. We have three very experienced evaluators lined up. First up, we have Chris Gold, who will be evaluating Scott Johnston on the Tasmanian Devil. Chris, you are on.
Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Scott, thank you for teaching me about the Tasmanian Devil. What a great topic, something that you don't hear about too much in this country. Your assignment was how to say it. So you needed to use some colorful words, but keeping it simple, and you did a great job at that. I liked some of the things, the rowdy communal feeding and how they amble with characteristic gait and the fierce noises and the sharp squeals. I especially enjoyed when you first started with your slideshow seeing a picture of the Tasmanian Devil. I honestly didn't know for sure if it was a real thing. So seeing a picture is what teaches you right off the bat, oh, okay, it is a real animal. And you taught us a lot about it to dissuade us from the fact that it is just a cartoon character. And I don't know, maybe you don't have the cartoon over there, the Looney Tunes, that it's the Tasmanian Devil. But although I appreciated learning the facts, I think your speech could have benefited by interweaving a little bit of the cartoon, of the tall tales of what a Tasmanian Devil does. I think that would have been fun, and speeches are always improved by stories, some kind of story, be it true or false. And one other thing, I know it's hard in an online club because a lot of us are doing it, but you missed the opening protocol, the Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Now, I gotta admit, I've always been a bit of a rebel, and when I first was taught to do the Toastmaster protocol, I rebelled. So you shouldn't always have to do that. But then I've learned the purpose of it. It gets you in practice for if you are in a formal speaking situation to always acknowledge your host. And it gives you something that you know you can start with before you actually start your speech. Let's see. The escaped from the Australia to Tasmania, I'm looking at more words that you gave, and I learned just so much about the Tasmanian devil. Thank you, Scott, Mr. General Evaluator.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Next up, to evaluate the Adrian Williams speech, get to the point, your story, we have Lois Margola. Lois.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, my fellow Toastmasters, and most especially Adrian. This was a fun story. The purpose of the story was to select a speech topic and determine its general specifics. Did she do that? Yes, Adrian, you did a fabulous, fabulous job. The whole idea was to be analyzing, who are you? How do you see yourself? How do other people see you? And wow, how do you combine the two and make that work? I especially enjoyed the fact that Adrian shared how people looked at her and how surprised she was, because in her mind, she had a whole different story going on. What's wrong with people? Why aren't you listening to my story? I am telling you like it is. Adrian, you had some fabulous ideas. You had confidence. You were very poised when you were up there. I would move a little bit to more center motion instead of over to the side like that. I thought you looked directly into the camera. Sometimes we don't know where that camera is, so it's just a guess, but you had great eye contact, and I especially loved your pauses and your vocal variety. I thought you did a really good job with that. Your story had an opening. What is your story? It has a body. How do people see you? What do my friends think about me? Change the perception. If you don't like what people are seeing, change the perception. How do you do that? You market yourself. You get your story out there. For myself, I am a work in progress. I am always changing who I am, and I think that's what most people do, because as we go through life, we realize, oh, there's another golden ring down there that I might want to achieve. So yes, we do change it up as to who we are. What could you have done a little bit different that might have enhanced this particular speech? I don't think the pain body, what's wrong with people, and telling us all these negatives really added anything to the story. I actually did that one time where I asked somebody this question, and all I kept thinking in my head was, she ever hear the word rhetorical question? Because I really didn't want to know that answer. I don't think that story really added anything to it. And I like the idea that you are talking about a legacy and Gandhi and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I would have liked that to come in the beginning. What I especially loved is your challenge at the end. When you challenged us to find out, what do people think about us? What do we think about ourselves? And how do we combine the two? The last thing I would encourage you is to try and figure out a way to use body language. It's a small area, I understand, but you can use your hands, whether it's to talk about your story, me, somehow get some movement in there so it's just not here. Overall, this was a magnificent story, and I was quite impressed with hearing the entire thing, and I thank you for sharing it with us, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Lois. Our third evaluator for this evening is Rolando. Rolando will be giving feedback on Graham's speech, Live Radio Will Be, The Death of Me. Rolando, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Graham. That was a wonderful speech, humorous, entertaining, and hilarious. I mean, I can watch the screen, everybody was smiling and laughing about all the stories, wonderful stories that you told us. One of the objectives that Graham had was to prepare a speech that opens off with a humorous story. And he did that. He told us the story about the blue country western music. And also one of his other objectives, he had to personalize the story. And he did personalize the story by telling us stories about his radio experience, his jobs, his first radio experience, his first jobs. And the other objective it had was to deliver the story smoothly and effectively. And he also did that. He kept us captivated, and we all listened to him, and he kept us going throughout the entire speech. Also, his organization is well defined. He had an intro, a body, and a conclusion. And the only other thing I like about is he had his good gestures. His voice, I could hear his voice, and he was very enthusiastic. Good eye contact. After saying all this, and I know Graham is an advanced speaker, and I'm still learning from him. The only thing I could suggest was maybe pause a little bit. Like when you tell us the intro story, pause a little to give us a time to catch up. As me, especially, I'm trying to hear what you're saying. So if you pause a little bit, I'll be able to get more out of what you're saying. And I can tell that you have the ability to do it, because when you try to impersonate the other roles, like when you were talking about the guy doing the funeral announcement, you pause a little bit. So I can hear you clearer when you're talking about the funeral announcement guy. So overall, I enjoyed the speech. And besides the pause, everything else was excellent. And I'm looking forward to your next speech so I can learn more from you. Mr. Junior Valudo.
Excellent, Rolando. I'll say it again with the mic on.
Thank you.
Still got to work on that. Jim Gould, you played a couple of different listening roles this evening. You want to give us your feedback on what you heard as counter and as grammarian?
Sure thing, Mr. President. I'll probably put the two together. As far as Oz go, let's get those out of the way. R.C. Arlene had 1, Mahi had 3, Morali had 1. He started his sentences a couple of times with so's. Those are filler words too. Michael had 3. David, you were doing well. I only counted 1. Chris had 1 Let's see. Norman had 3. Where are we? That looks like about it for the ahs and the ers and the nos. The grammarian, it was a little tougher to follow. Well, I wasn't quite ready for it, but Norman, that same dichotomy, I like that phrase. And Scott's Tasmanian devil with its reputed bad temper, I like that. Adrian, in this journey of telling your story, that was a nice phrase. Graham, I think he gets the trophy for best. We've got both kinds of music, country and western. I do remember that from the movie. Big black things that spin. I thought that was really kind of a good way to put the platters. Let's see, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Spectacularly inappropriate songs. I kind of like that. And Crabby Old Biddy. I think you should have played that. The Witch is Dead. Where are we? Chris had something. Tell your story, be it true or false. So today's Best Grammar Trophy is going to Graham. Good job today, Mr. President.
I neglected to ask our timer to give feedback on how the evaluators did on time. Was everybody within time? And Mr. Timer, if you have other comments on timeliness in general for this meeting, this would be the time to share them.
Okay. I'll post the details in the chat, but for evaluators, we had Rolando at 2:45, Lois 3:30, and Chris 2:42. Table topics, Arlene 1:20, Morali 1:20, Michael 1:28. And for speakers, Graham 6:53, Adrian 6:54. Scott is the winner with the highest number, but not going over, with 6:55. Congratulations, everybody, for being on time today.
All right, excellent. So if you haven't already done so, send your votes to Christian for Best Evaluator, as well as table topics and speaker if you haven't gotten to that yet. We had a watcher this evening, Arlene Jaime. What did you see?
Well, I didn't see anything bad. Everybody was in focus and clear. Excellent slideshow by Scott, and I want to commend Graham for standing up. It was perfect. A1A presentation. Your hand gestures, everything was perfect. I'd like to share a tip with you if I have time. The other day I talked a little bit about discovering that dual screen thing. Well, my eyes wander a lot, especially when I'm over here trying to find the person who's speaking. So what I did with the big speaker view on this other screen is I shrank it down to like a 3x5 size card, and I put it directly under my camera. So when people are speaking, I can focus on them. And if I want to look over at the gallery over here on the side, I can do that, but my eyes aren't looking off to the side and rolling around all over the screen.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. All the logistics we get into here. Let's see. Our chat monitor, Morali, was anything significant pop up in the chat this evening?
There were some interesting things going on in the chat. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of supportive comments for the speakers, evaluators, and table topics. So that was the wonderful thing. At the beginning of the chat, there were some couple of questions about who the role were for the helpers, and that was sorted out by Norman after the first speaker. So probably one suggestion I have is if there are no guests, we don't have to skip our introduction, because introduction has got two parts. One is the self-introduction, other one is the introduction of the particular role that person is doing it. So when we skip the one, then both got skipped, and people forgot which role being for the helpers. So that could be avoided. And there is a URL posted for the Firebirds, so people have noted down one. And other than that, timer has also posted all the timings immediately after each one of them is completed. That's a good one. So overall, it's a good chat today. Thank you, Toastmaster.
Okay. And Arlene also did post the link to the Firebirds meeting where they're honoring Bob Blakely. So that is there. If you want to save the chat, there's if you go into the chat and look under more, there's an option to save it to your machine.
The link is actually to our website. The official invitation isn't going out until Sunday, but you'll see it posted all over. But yeah.
Okay. All right. They will promote it. Just trying to help.
Thank you.
Let's say, Christian, do we have some winners in the voting?
Yes, we do. So we have for Best Evaluator, Louise Margolin. Congratulations to her. Voted best speaker by long shot was Graham Kent from Brisbane with his humorous touch. And best table topics, that was a close one, was Arlene Jamie. Congratulations.
All right, excellent. Let's say, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day, do you want to make some wrap-up comments before I wrap up the meeting?
No, go ahead, David.
Okay. All right. So let me share my screen. We do have a simplified agenda for next week since it is a special workshop.
David, before we do that, we do have a guest on the
We do have
screens.
actually, yeah, let me get out of the screen sharing so that we don't, and we should also mention Michael Christie is our newest member. I don't know whether we've traditionally, formally welcomed him with a lot of fanfare, but welcome to the club, Michael. He's now 100% official and paid up and application on file, all that good stuff. But let me also, I don't know how to pronounce your name offhand. Rodain from Saudi Arabia is with us, and you want to just briefly introduce yourself? We're glad you were able to join us.
Yeah. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I don't know. I'm in Dubai now. Okay, it was last minute visit, so that's why I mixed the time. I couldn't join I joined last 50 minutes. So my name is Radwan. That's spelling in French.
Radwan. Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So as you say, the English is not my first or second language. It's my third language. So I speak Arabic, French fluently, and English as well.
Okay.
So I'm system engineer. I'm computer engineer, basically, in international company. Maybe you know Juniper Networks.
Oh, sure.
And I joined the Toastmasters Club last May. It is based in Saudi Arabia. I completed my fourth project, CC project. So I'm preparing for the fifth one. And I would like to join this club as well, because I see that there are a lot of experience here, a lot of, let's say, international experience. Okay, so I prefer to have join this club as well.
Okay,
because
well, welcome.
The English is very, I prefer to join because you are talking a lot of, you have a lot of DTMs here, I think, right?
We have a few, yeah. And people who have other experience as well. Our rule actually is we want you to come to 2 meetings as a guest, but after the next meeting, we'll count this as your first one, and if you want to come back next time, you can make a short speech about why you'd like to join, and we'll formally vote you in and send you the paperwork. So let's say, all right. Let me go back to what I was doing a moment ago. So I was going to share my screen and try and fill some roles for next week. So we have a simplified agenda. Jim and Chris are going to be giving the main presentation. We have about 30 minutes blocked out for them. We're not letting it take over the whole meeting the way we did with some of our other guest speakers, because we'll have them back and we can ask them follow-up questions. But we'll basically be doing their presentation and then table topics, and we'll have room for an evaluator for them as well. Most of these roles are not filled at the moment. So do we have volunteers for any roles? Evaluator, general evaluator, topics master? Most things are open. Just speak up and identify yourself by name, because I can't see everybody when I'm sharing my screen.
This is Michael. I'd like to be the vote counter for next week.
Okay, so I don't think we have a vote counter, or if we do, I guess we would need a vote counter for table topics. So yeah, that's a good one to start with. Sure, that'd be great.
And this is Norman. I'll be table topics master.
All right. Excellent.
This is Jim Dent. I'll do the watcher role.
Okay. Norman. Jim Dent for watcher. What were you saying, Mahi?
I can do the chat monitor.
Okay. I'm going to do Jim Dent and chat monitor Mahi. And we need an evaluator and a general evaluator.
I'm happy, Graham, I'm happy to evaluate.
All right, that'd be great.
I can do the general evaluation, Murali.
Excellent. Oops, getting these backwards. And
Gone up.
oh, see, it's the first
Yep.
name last thing that throws me a little bit. But there we go. Okay. All right, we're in pretty good shape then for next week. I did want to show you this one new thing on the website. Is there is now, if you go into the evaluations screen, you can go to request evaluation, and it will have listed the last several roles that you have filled, any speeches you've given. So I can choose this here, and I'm going to nominate Arlene and say, try this out. And this will send her, come on now, it will send her this little email saying, please evaluate me using the link below. So she'll get that by email. She can follow this link and fill out the form that covers basically the same things that would be in the printed manual. But the idea with these online forms was always to avoid having to email PDFs back and forth, that kind of thing, scanning and faxing and whatever. So give it a try. Maybe you can, but this is meant to make it a little bit easier. So we're not in the same space. We can't pass each other the book, but you can send somebody a link saying, I did this role, I'd like to be evaluated for it. And then evaluations you've received are tracked, and evaluations you've given are tracked here. So I've been doing some work on fleshing that out, and I'd appreciate it if you give me feedback on how it works. Okay.
Hey, David, could you
Yes.
could you just do the first couple clicks again? Where on the website do I start?
All right.
Thank you, Chris. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Going, where did he go?
Yeah, that's the, well, that's the problem is it's obvious to me. But so when you're logged in, you can go back and forth between the front end and the back end of the site. You go under
the
Toastmasters.
dashboard. That's what I missed. Yeah,
There's
that's a big one.
There's this whole thing here, and then we go under evaluations.
Got it.
And on the opening screen, it has listed opportunities for you to give an evaluation. So this would show some of the recent projects. You can follow the link from here to give Scott an evaluation. But if he wanted to request one of somebody else, he would go to that request evaluation tab. That's the idea. Anyway, so explore around in there. Tell me if it breaks. And
Okay, so Scott, if it's all right with you, I'll do that this way tonight.
This is new and improved. All right.
Thank you, David.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Actually, I was thinking this. It could be a good thing for offline clubs too, where people show up and they don't have their manual. You can send them the link after the meeting, and they could still get credit for it. Okay. Cool. Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.